your beautiful impact. So, first of all, I just want to say what a pleasure it is to be with you, and everyone from your minister to your staff to your lovely music team and sound team are just so beautiful. I know you're blessed, but I want to thank everybody that's been so helpful this morning first, before I forget. So, the week that I was writing this lesson that I'm going to share with you, and this is a music lesson, I'm going to share songs and words and stories. The week I was creating this was kind of monumental because I went off to the Verizon store and purchased a brand new iPhone. And boy, was I excited because my technology was kind of old. And so as soon as I got that iPhone in my hand, I said to my husband, show me how to talk to Siri. I want to have a conversation with Siri right now. And so I asked her, Siri, direct me to my home address. Now, I knew how to get home. I just wanted to see if she knew. And do you know what she said to me? She said, I'm sorry, I can't help you right now. And I was a little flustered because I had just spent a lot of money on this phone and I had this belief she was going to change my life, you know. And so this time I asked her again, enunciating very clearly, spelling out my address fully, and using hand gestures. And she responded to me, I'm sorry, I can't help you right now. Well, I was so flustered, something slipped out of my mouth that I probably should not have said. Do you want to know what that phone said back to me? She said, Claudia, your language. You know, I just marvel at technology and these people that program these phones. How did they get my mother inside that phone? I do not know. But that was the beginning of a very unusual relationship with my phone. She's had great impact on my life. And I'm really a great admirer of Steve Jobs and all that he created. And whether you're a big fan of the creator of Apple products or not, I think we can all agree that he came to this world with a mission and left here leaving an amazing impact on how we live our lives and how we interact and how we share community together. And I'm here to tell you that that same stuff, that same genius, that same capacity to light up the world that was within him is within all of us too. Oh yeah, breathe it in. And, I have an authority's word on it. This is from the Bible. Jesus said these words. He said, you are the light of the world. You are a city on a hill that cannot be hid. No one lights a lamp and puts it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives great light to all in the house. So it's our very nature to shine and have impact on one another, to be, as Maya Angelou says, a rainbow in the clouds for one another. We have tremendous outreach and impact in our life and in our world. And, we stand on the shoulders of those that came before us, both friends and total strangers. And in turn, we do our part by passing our light on. It's a beautiful thing. So today, my intent is to leave you with a fuller appreciation of the beauty that you bring to life. As a singer, I find myself singing at a lot of memorial services from time to time. And a common thread that I hear all the time is, he was such a beautiful soul. He has no idea how he changed my life. She was so shy and sweet. She has no impact on what she gave me. So why not take a little time and really focus on the impact that we have? Because what we focus on increases. So I'm going to share a few stories from my life, a few random stories on the topic of beautiful impact. When I was a teenager, I was a nonconformist and a loner. I didn't have a lot of friends. I was not academically gifted. Didn't really have a lot of athletic ability. I was one of those kids, I guess I just They didn't know where my gifts were. Now, I thought that I could be a musician. That's what I really wanted to do. But my parents really had in their mind the starving artist image of a musician, and they didn't encourage it at all. But I have found that when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And I found a great mentor. It was my high school English teacher, Mr. Bogart. Now, Mr. Bogart was a lot like me, too. He had long, hippie-length hair. He didn't look like the rest of the teachers. And rumor had it sometimes when he was walking through the hallway that some of the teachers would ask him for his hall pass. He looked more like a student than a teacher. And I had heard that he was a musician, and that made him really cool in my mindset. But despite his appearance, despite the fact that he was a musician, he was very strict. He made us keep a journal and write in it daily for 15 minutes every day. This was a graded activity. He told us, you must develop discipline if you want to be successful in life. You will develop this discipline of writing this journal every day. I don't care whether you write original thoughts. I don't care if you copy something out of the newspaper, but you will practice discipline in my class. Well, all of the kids groaned, including me. But you know what? In keeping that journal, I finally discovered a place where I could write all my dreams and goals and desires. And there was no grown-up looking over my shoulder saying, that's not practical. You could never do those things. I thrived in Mr. Bogart's class. You know, he taught me about Julius Caesar and Shakespeare and Romeo and Juliet and poetry. And somehow he found a way to make amazing connections between great literary works and works of music. Again, earning my respect because I loved music. You know, I still have a paper after all these years that was graded by Mr. Bogart. I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. It had two things on it, A+, the first A+ I ever got in school, and the word succinct. Now, I didn't know what succinct meant, but I wasn't going to ask him. I ran to the dictionary. That's how much impact he had on me. For the first time in my academic career, I cracked open the dictionary and figured out what succinct meant. Direct, concise, to the point. Now, I know this seems small, but I now had a new way of seeing myself. I was succinct. I learned and thrived in his classroom and left that sophomore year a brighter, more confident young woman. And when I came back from my junior year, I was so disappointed to learn that Mr. Bogart was no longer employed by our school system. I was a little brokenhearted. You see, I never said thank you. I wasn't really sure what it was he had given me, really. Years later, 20 to 30 years later, I was taking a workshop at a Unity church about our mentors and the people that left a lasting imprint on our lives. And I started to think again about Mr. Bogart. And I decided that I wanted to find him no matter what, just to say thank you for the huge impact he had on my life. Now, I didn't really know his whole name. To me, he was Mr. Bogart. So my attempts to Google him, were not successful. But I'm a woman of great faith, and I know how to pray affirmatively. So I just made a powerful statement, and I said, I declare and I know that I will find Mr. Bogart if he is still alive, and I will get a chance to thank him from the bottom of my heart for all he's given to me. And I can't wait to see how you work this out, because I like to say that at the end of some of my prayers. Well, a few months later, the minister where I serve as a music director asked me to do some research on a New Thought artist who travels around to different churches. He does workshops and talks, and his name was Fred Bogart. Yeah. Well, it didn't really ring a bell. So, I gave him a call. We had a lovely conversation. I took the information on his rates, and I thanked him very much and hung up. A day or two later, as I was driving around town, that small little voice spoke to me and said, "That was such a nice man you chatted with the other day, that Mr. Bogart. You know, he has the same name as your mentor that you're trying to find." And of course, my logical brain kicked in and said, "How unlikely is that? Couldn't be. Doesn't even look like him." But that still small voice persisted. And ladies and gentlemen, I've learned that when it talks, it has amazing things for us. So I decided to follow up on that guidance. And I sent an email to Mr. Fred Bogart and said, "I am trying to find somebody who impacted me when I was a teenager. My parents were going through a nasty divorce and really didn't know how to mentor me. And this person really had a huge impact on me academically and personally. Could you be my high school English teacher, Mr. Bogart?" I waited a few days and then I got a response. And he said, "Dear Miss Carawan, the person that you're trying to reach, I believe, is my brother, Mac Bogart, who taught English in Northern Virginia in the 1970s. Well, I got God bumps. Isn't that cool? And within a few days, I was on the phone with Mr. Bogart, and I said, "Listen, I want to tell you up front, you don't need to remember me. I know you taught a lot of people, but I'm somebody from your past, and I want to tell you that you had a huge impact on me. I want you to know that I still keep my journal after all these years. I want you to know that I did develop discipline. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart." Well, he got quiet. And he said, "I am very grateful for your call and somewhat baffled. It just never occurred to me that I had any impact on anyone." And then I said, "Mr. Bogart, your impact is huge, much bigger than you can possibly measure, and bigger than you and I. You taught lots of people throughout your lifetime. And consider this, I'm a teacher now that works with at-risk youth. I'm passing it on. You should hear me talk to them. I tell them all the time, you must develop discipline. You will develop discipline in my class." Like Mr. Bogart, we can never fully understand our impact in this world. I've come to see that we're like threads in this magnificent tapestry. It's a masterpiece. But we lack the ability to see it from a bird's eye view, so we never fully appreciate or see the role that we play. But we are magnificent. It's a miracle the way we bump up against one another, sometimes offering a word of encouragement, maybe sharing important information, sometimes bringing unpleasant stuff up to the surface that needs to be healed. The impact of each person in this room is an amazing wonder. We're engaged in a miracle that we can't even recognize. You're the light in someone's you're the light in someone's life, and you're the lifeline in someone's turbulent ocean. Which brings me to my first song, which I wrote thinking about Mr. Bogart. That's what I told myself. I saw a crack in the mirror, you saw a diamond in the rough. Even when I couldn't see, you never gave up on me. You reached out your heart to mine. You let me know I could shine. You threw me a lifeline, just at the right time. Who knows where I'd be? You threw me a lifeline, just at the right time, when you believed in me.
drowning in my self-doubt, reaching for my way out. No hope in sight, going down for a third time. Suddenly you were there, like an answer to a prayer. I wonder if you realize how much you changed my life. You threw me a lifeline, just at the right time. Who knows where I'd be? You threw me a lifeline, just at the right time, when you believed in me. And I'm touched by the way that you gave your gifts so freely. I will never forget what you did for me. You threw me a lifeline, just at the right time. Who knows where I'd be? You threw me a lifeline, just at the right time, when you believed in me. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Ooh. Give me a lifeline. Did you realize what you did for me? Yeah. Give me a lifeline. Told me that I could shine. Yeah. Give me a lifeline. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Give me a lifeline. Ooh, what a gift you gave to me. You believed in me, yeah, yeah. Give me a lifeline. Sweet from your heart to mine, yeah. Give me a lifeline. 'Cause you believe. You give me a lifeline, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, sometimes that's the best gift that you can give anybody, is simply to believe in them. Which brings me to my next story. And I'll start by just saying sometimes we are the light when we can't even recognize it. When we think that we're stumbling in the darkness, we are still the light. A few years ago, I went to a party with my husband, and I was surprised to run into a friend from college that I had not seen in many, many years. I mean, the tears were flowing as we hugged and laughed and caught each other up on our busy lives. She became a successful psychotherapist with her own private practice, and I told her about my music career. When the conversation began to wane, she took me by the hand and looked straight in my eyes and said, "Claudia, I want you to know that you've had a tremendous impact on my life." Well, now it was my turn. I couldn't believe it. Me? You see, back in those days, I suffered from depression, low self-esteem, and a certain bitterness. I was not a happy person. So I was really surprised that she saw me as an inspiration. And then she reminded me of a story from my past, a story I had totally forgotten about how I came to acquire my kitchen table. I'm going to back up a little bit, and I'll start by saying back in those days, I didn't have a spiritual practice of any kind. I was a single girl living on my own without a support system in town. What I really wanted was a sense of love, maybe a partner that would laugh at my jokes, and a community of friends. But it just seemed that those things were hard for me to bring into my life. I wandered into a bookstore one day and picked up a book called The Power of Positive Thinking from Norman Vincent Peale. I took it home and started reading it. I was really intrigued at the thought that I could use my imagination to bring new things into my life. I didn't really have a whole lot of money, and I knew I had a good imagination, so I thought I'd give it a try. So I started to harness my thoughts and thinking about maybe a husband that would laugh at my jokes, or friends that would always be there for me, and all the gigs that I could possibly want as a musician. I somehow felt like I was doing it wrong because nothing was happening. So I went out to the country to a little country store and purchased an old oak table with beautiful engraved chairs. It was quite a sight because I really didn't have any furniture in my apartment other than orange crates and wicker. But you see, this table really wasn't a piece of furniture for me. It represented family and home. I invited all my girlfriends over, and I said, okay, from now on, I am not chasing after love anymore, because all the love that I need is centered around this table. I started to preach. I said, I'm going to sit here with my girlfriends and drink tea around this table. And one day, I will drink champagne with my fiance around this kitchen table. And one day, I'll cook dinner for my family. It'll be Thanksgiving dinner, and I hope I don't burn it, but it'll happen around this table. And one day, I'm going to roll out gingerbread cookie dough on this kitchen table. When Susan reminded me of this story from my past, my jaw dropped. I started crying. I said to her, I still own that kitchen table. And I just baked gingerbread cookies with my daughter last week. I had totally forgotten. I was amazed when she told me that many of her clients were women that loved too much and searched for validation outside of themselves, and that she had been sharing this story as a part of her practice for many, many years with total strangers. Another story about beautiful impact. And amazing to me that I could have impact on not only my friend, but on her clients, even at a time in my life when I felt that I was stumbling around in the darkness. Yes, we surely are the light of the world, even when we don't realize it. And now I'll share my final story. When my daughter, who is now in college, when she was in high school, she came home one day and decided that she wanted to be a cheerleader. I was a little frustrated at this because I knew that would mean I would have to be driving her to meets. And as a musician, I like to be going to performances and gigs on the weekends. But I wanted to give her everything that she wanted. And so we signed her up for a traveling cheerleading team. And I learned a few things. The first thing I learned is that cheerleading is probably the only sport I know that requires glitter eyeshadow and lip gloss. And it was expensive, all the costumes and the uniforms and all the traveling. And I learned another thing, that cheerleaders were very, very serious about their sport. Case in point, we had a meet scheduled that we were supposed to go to in Maryland. And a day or two before the meet, the forecasters were calling for ice and snow all the way up the eastern seaboard. Well, surely these people would cancel the meet. People didn't want to travel in that mess, right? Oh no. The meet was going on, and so we talked about it and decided that she should not let her team down. She needed to be there. So we decided we would drive to a hotel in Maryland the day before the snowstorm was forecast, spend the night in that hotel close to the Coliseum, and then we would have a short commute in the snow and ice to her event, and then we could decide if we were going to travel home that night. That was our plan. So we woke up that morning, and I looked at the hotel window, and all I could see was white. It was beautiful and scary at the same time, if you know what I mean. We went downstairs and had a quick breakfast, and both Ed and I were worried that maybe we had made a bad choice to be out and away from our home in such a disastrous weather mix. Ed went outside and scraped off the car and started to heat it up. And Veronica and I went upstairs, and as she applied her glitter, I finished packing, and we rushed out into the hallway to take the elevator downstairs so we could check out. Well, a very interesting thing happened when I stepped into that elevator. I was overwhelmed by a profound sense of love. It didn't feel like a hotel elevator or lobby. It felt like a chapel. I quickly observed there was only one person on the elevator with us, a hotel cleaning lady. She looked up and smiled at us and said hello. I was just dumbstruck, staring at her, wondering, am I imagining this? Is all this love coming from you? Well, you know, there are rules about conduct in an elevator, right? You know, they're kind of unspoken, but you don't stare. How I was already breaking that rule. The other rule is that you don't talk unless it's small talk. And I really wanted to get serious with her. I wanted to say, have you been praying on this elevator? Because it feels like church in here. But she spoke first, and she looked right at my daughter and said, "My, don't you look beautiful?" And Veronica beamed up at her and said, "Thank you. I'm going to a cheerleading meet." And she said, "Well, that looks like a lot of fun." And then I said, "Well, you know, we traveled all the way up from Richmond, Virginia to avoid all this snow and ice. Looks like we'll be traveling in a lot of mess today." Well, the elevator finally reached the bottom and the doors opened and it was time to leave. But I didn't want to leave because, you know, when you are surrounded by a loving presence, all the worry and concerns that you carry, they just drop to the side. What you feel is love. You feel caught up in that love. We started to leave, and then she said to me, "I want you to know that I'll be praying for you all day today, and the good Lord will watch over you as you travel." And there it was, ladies and gentlemen, confirmation. I knew I wasn't crazy. I knew I wasn't imagining things. That love was coming from her. That was a praying woman who loved God. I left. Well, actually, I said to her, "Thank you. Thank you so much. I'll be praying for you too." You see, I left that hotel that day in a new state of awareness. Earlier, I was filled with worry and concern, and now I had just been reminded of the beautiful, amazing, always present power of God's love. Just by sharing a ride with a total stranger in an elevator. You know, I don't know her name. I don't know her religious affiliation. I don't need to know it. I know that she loved God, and I know that she loved God so profoundly that she loved me, a total stranger. And you know, there's a lot of people out there that profess to love God, but just have a little trouble with that loving people thing, right? Through the years, I've wondered how many times she has blessed people merely by being in their presence. And now I'll ask you to ponder this question. How many times have you blessed others merely by being in their presence? You are the light of the world. And you don't need to do anything inspiring. You don't need to be singing or preaching to just bring forth the light that is within you, that comes from you effortlessly. I'm going to close my talk with a song called "Shine." And I want to thank you so much for being such a beautiful congregation. I'm going to invite you to sing the chorus with me. It's so easy. I'm going to take you to the islands right now. Oh, yeah. Shine the light into the world. Shine the light into the world. Shine
the light into the world. Let it shine. It is time for one and all to live a dream, answer the call. There is enough love in this room to change the world, and the world needs our love, yeah. Shine the light into the world. Shine the light into the world. Shine the light into the world. Let it shine. One by one we plant the seed. Wherever there's a need, we'll be the very hands and heart of love, reaching out into the world. Woo! Shine the light into the world. Hey, hey, come on. Shine the light into the world. Shine the light into the world. Let it shine. Yes, yes. We reach a place in our human evolution. People get ready for the love of revolution. For every problem, we're the solution. Now is the time to put on your shine. Where is God in the midst of tragedy, but living in the hands and heart of humanity? Answer the call and let love set you free. Now is the time to put on your shine. Shine the light into the world.
You got to shine on, shine on, shine your light on.
Shine the light into the world.
You gotta keep it coming, gotta keep it from my way.
Shine the light into the world.
You gotta come with him, come with him, come with him, come on, yeah.
The time is right, we can unite to fight the fight, brothers and sisters. Shine your light for peace, for freedom. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Shine the light into the world.
You got to love the Lord, he come up from my way.
Shine the light into the world. Shine the light into the world. The world needs your love. Yes, the world needs your love. Thank you.